Hello, everybody. We're just a minute to go. No, we're at 18:30. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Dilis Clare. I'm a GP medical herbalist at Dr. Clare's Apothecary here in Galway on the Wild Atlantic Way in the west of Ireland. And it's mid-October, and it's been a beautiful day. I want to thank my assistant, Michelle, who is going to point out any questions or any suggestions or any information that you might want to add to what I'm saying, just so that I can interact with you in a live event, because that makes such a difference to you and to me. We're going to be considering the role of cholesterol in heart disease tonight. And I might start off by saying that I'm not sure that there is a huge role for cholesterol and its management in heart disease, in that I don't think that cholesterol is anything like the demon that's often it's often portrayed in the press and the media and by the medical establishment. I'm going to base my talk around this, which is what I discuss with my patients. As you can see, it's got 5 sections, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll go through them systematically. This chart is available on, and it's in the chat here. It's available on Dr. Clare Apothecary. If you go into programs under drclare.ie, you'll find it under programs. Or you can just get a pen and pencil and just make them up as you go along. We'll be starting here, and then just leave space for 5 columns, and you can make notes as you go along. I've had this message about cholesterol for the past, out of the 22 years I've been in practice in Galway, and since qualifying as a medical herbalist, I think I have been promoting this viewpoint of cholesterol for the past probably 17 or 18 years. I was very glad to be accompanied on this journey by Dr. Malcolm McKendrick, who's a fellow GP in the UK, and lots of his YouTubes are available. Some of them I have resourced on the chat. We have to put it into several distinct chats because there's a limit to the number of characters, but hopefully you'll find your way through that. And more recently, and he has been talking about this misrepresentation of cholesterol since about 2012, I think, maybe 2014, and more recently joined by a cardiologist, Malcolm McKendrick and Malhotra. I think it's Azim Malhotra, who has addressed, both of them have addressed eminent medical societies in the UK on this matter. So I'm no longer a lone voice. The management, the use of cholesterol is much more useful as a generalized indicator of inflammation and glucose, poor glucose tolerance. So going a little bit too close to the diabetic spectrum, even if you are not actually registering as a diabetic, that there's too much of a glycemic load, often compounded by stress and poor diet and all the rest of it. So cholesterol is it's a transport system within the body. It involves the lipid metabolism, so getting the right balance of essential lipid nutrients in your diet is very important, but we'll come on to that. So when you look at the cholesterol in your diet, we're starting over here on column 1. When you look at the cholesterol in your diet, 80% is produced by your body and 20% is introduced by food. So immediately you've got a good clue there that what you eat is important. It's 20% important. That's 1/5. But also it's not the sole responsibility. Diet is not the sole responsibility, or even the majority responsibility for what's happening in your your cholesterol levels, inflammatory coping mechanisms. So I would include cholesterol as a way of dealing with or averting harm rather than. So the fact that it's raised is not good. but it's not specifically not good, particularly to do with the cardiovascular system. So if you have a cholesterol of 5.9 and 20% is proportionate to your food, changing your diet would probably bring it down to 5.2-ish, which means that that's 100% of the difference that you're looking for if you're looking to reduce your cholesterol down to 5. Okay, 5 would be the cutoff point that most doctors would say is within the normal range. Malcolm McKendrick describes an ideal cholesterol as 5.6, 5.7, and I would tend to agree with him. So I don't even consider a cholesterol as being out of the usual range below that. So this is where 20% can equal 100% effect. It's what I call magical mathematics, which is the kind of mathematics I quite like. Okay, so within the food, so we're talking you can make a big difference, because you don't want to reduce your cholesterol to 0, do you? Because that would be very unfortunate. A cholesterol level of below 4.5 is not advantageous. Even if you have diabetes, in my viewpoint. People who have a very low cholesterol, I'm looking for very serious diseases, because low cholesterol can be a marker for imminent problems. So what we want to do is we do want to have fats in our diet. Fats in your diet don't necessarily make you fat, unless you're eating crisps, but healthy fats in your diet are part of a very important part of satiety. And if you feel full, you stop eating, unless you have a food eating problem. So fats are very good in the diet. The essential fatty acids are oily fish, 2 to 3 portions a week, avocado, 1 or 2 a week, oily fish, avocado, and nuts and seeds. So what you want is, you don't want to be saying, Dr. Clare said that eating loads and loads of nuts and seeds are good for you. What I mean is 3 teaspoons of nuts or seeds a day. And that's about 6 almonds, 3 Brazil nuts, or 3 teaspoons of seeds. And pumpkin seeds are particularly good for men, and also particularly good for sleeping. And sleeping is an important restorative role for preventing heart problems. Okay, so unhelpful fats, I'm sure I don't need to say what they are. They're all the trans fats found in foods, and all substitute butters. I don't advise the cholesterol lowering spreads, because it's artificial food. It's highly processed, and the amount that you would need to eat to make a significant impact on your cholesterol, if that was a number that you were chasing for your heart health, is not, it does not add to your health profile. So butter, and a small amount of butter is better than any of these processed spreads. If you're vegan and you don't want to eat butter, I would suggest using olive oil, preferably just as the oil, and if necessary, the more processed ones can be used, but in a very small amount. Sugars, including fruit. Fruit is nature's candy. So when you're eating your 7 fruit and veg a day, eat the majority of vegetables rather than fruits. So they avoid granulated sugar, castor sugar, muscovado sugar, any of those things. If you want to add sugar, I suggest that you use unprocessed molasses. Blackstrap molasses is probably the healthiest, because it still has some of the B vitamins from the raw cane. Raw cane sugar is not unhealthy, because it also has vitamins. By the time you process the sugar, anything white in your food is generally way over processed. Okay. A lot of the maple sugar is synthetic, and there's a huge scandal about the maple syrup market, to do with withholding it and price and all that kind of thing. So, and the agave I used to suggest, but I no longer do, again, because of the processing. The other thing that you can use, and maybe you can bring it over to me, Michelle, is the stevia. Stevia is a green herb, or we have it as a tincture. It's a whole herb. It's very sweet. It's actually sweeter than licorice. And you can make a tea with this, and you can put it in the fridge for a few days, and that's the stevia. So if you want to sweeten anything, that's a good idea. Or the herb that we would use would be sweet cicely, very easy to grow in the garden. And you can add those to stewed apples and all those kinds of things that you might want to give a little bit of sweetness. So that's the kind of overall fats and sugars in the diet. The most important aspect, and I have it in very big writing here, is fiber. 100% of cholesterol is excreted via the alongside fiber via the stools. So 100% of it is excreted with fiber. Then you need enough fiber in order to excrete it. And this is in keeping with all of the sex hormones. If you don't have enough fiber, you recirculate all of the waste products from the steroid hormone group, which is not good for your overall health or your cholesterol. So what we're saying is that a buildup of cholesterol represents as like a buildup of anything is not good for your overall homeodynamics, sugar tolerance, and needs to be eliminated via fiber in the diet. The easiest is the oat bran. So if you have porridge for breakfast, add a little bit of oat bran. To a serving of porridge, add a teaspoon of oat bran every morning. Vary your cereals in the morning so that you have a mixture between millet flakes, buckwheat flakes. Now, if you're talking about cardiovascular health and structure of the small blood vessels, you want to use buckwheat noodles or buckwheat flakes in your cereal. You can get them like porridge flakes, and they are very good for the structure of the blood vessels. And that's what you want, is health, strength, and resilience. So fiber is also things like lentils in your soup. These are not difficult things to incorporate, and they make a big difference to your health. Now, the other way to maintain cardiovascular health is by exercise. And there's 3 different kinds of exercise. There's stamina, stretching, and flexibility. So when you're walking, you want to walk fast enough to not be able to talk, for talking to be a little bit of an effort. You want to do some stretching. It can be in a chair. It can be yoga on the floor. It can be using isometric exercises. There's just loads of them on YouTube. And flexibility, which means using the full range of movement of all of your joints in turn. So that's important. Digestion is important. It's important what food you put on your plate, what food you put in your mouth. And then after that, what's important is how much you absorb. Now, the absorption needs to be so that you're absorbing the helpful nutrients that the digestive system is designed when it's in a healthy state to absorb. But you don't want too loose connections between the cells so that molecules that are too big can cross over. And particularly grains and amino acid clumps that are slightly bigger than what the body historically has been, over years of coevolution, has been designed to absorb, to assimilate. So if you want to keep a good tone and astringency in the gut, and we'll come back to that with some of the herbs that we'll be suggesting. You also want the fiber and good regular normal bowel motions once a day. It would be the herbalist mantra of a well-formed stool to eliminate what you no longer need from all of your metabolic waste. And all of this is affected by the gut flora. The digestive system has become of increasing importance as recognized by the medical model of mainstream medicine. Although I would argue that herbalism is mainstream medicine. But the truth of the matter is that the gut is important because it's such a huge surface area, and because it's our closest integration between the outside world, what we take into our bodies, through a tube that goes down through the digestive system and eliminates at the other end. Everything that's inside that tube is external to the body. So the lining of the gut is actually the barrier between our outside world and our inside world. Why wouldn't it be important? It's recognized as important in every indigenous medical system universally. So the gut flora is where we all know that we'll never be lonely, because we share our gut with about 30 million bacteria, parasites, all sorts of things that would give us the horrors. So, except that some of them are very useful, some of them just mind their own business, and some of them can be harmful if allowed to get out of kilter. Um, so the helpful ones make vitamins for us, and help us with other aspects of our metabolism. So maintaining a healthy gut flora is very important. Now, I'll introduce some of the herbs that are good for all of these aspects of these things. Sage and thyme. Can I encourage you all to use the onion family sage and thyme for their antiseptic properties? Because undoubtedly we will have another wave of COVID-19. And these are our natural antiseptics, garlic in particular for the respiratory tract. And the other preventive for COVID is Nigella seeds, which are anti-inflammatory. I put them on my porridge in the morning. I think they taste quite nice. For other people, they can cook them into their soups, stews, and casseroles, and they have a very helpful anti-inflammatory effect. So the other herbs are turmeric and black pepper, especially together, combined in a food that also has fats, or a meal that also has fats. So you could just simply put them in yogurt. You could put them in any food that's been cooked with coconut oil or any other oil. And they are anti-inflammatory and specifically good for cholesterol. Cayenne pepper or capsicum. Fenugreek. Fenugreek has got a role because of the overlap between cholesterol metabolism and sugar metabolism. And fenugreek is also rich in minerals, and it's also good for the sterol, as in cholesterol, and all of the sterol sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen. So fenugreek is it's also mucilage, which is good for the health of the digestive system, and it's also got fiber. So it's one of my superfoods is fenugreek. And cinnamon. Cinnamon is particularly good for sugar intolerance, glucose intolerance. So there's the link between thyroid health, sugar health, and cholesterol. And it's for that reason, and because it indicates that where cholesterol is trying to protect the body from an inflammatory process. That's my interpretation of it as a herbalist. Okay. So we're doing good. Let's take a breath. Is there anybody out there who wants to ask anything? Michelle, or are we doing okay? Hi guys, anybody here? Yeah, we've 20 people listening, so anybody wants to add in a question, suggestion, or just say hi, that would be very nice. Okay. So we've covered foods, digestion, elimination, and some of the spices that might be helpful, and you see that there might be overlap with them from other areas of consideration. So the two things that help the fiber eliminate cholesterol. If you think of anything, if something is too high, the first thing you look at is, well, what can I stop eating that might be loaded with unhelpful levels? And eggs are fine, by the way. I think we've dispelled the myth that eggs, they have lecithin, which is related to cholesterol, but it doesn't increase the cholesterol. So most of the things that encourage unhelpful cholesterol we've covered already, and the things that are helpful, the essential fatty acids and the fiber. So the fenugreek particularly helps the pancreas because there's an overlap between the cholesterol, sugar metabolism, and thyroid health and resilience. So the other thing that connects these is bile. So a lot of the herbs that we use and the foods that we encourage for cholesterol, for a helpful cholesterol management in our homeodynamic systems is encouraging bile. Bitters, they're called bitters because they taste very bitter. Now, not sour, but bitter. Okay, so bitter herbs are very good for encouraging bile to combine with the fiber, combine with what needs to be eliminated in the blood, and be an effective cholesterol management system. Of course, related to the sugar metabolism and thyroid metabolism are the adrenal glands. And all of these are connected through feedback mechanisms and loops with the hypothalamus and pituitary, which is at the base of the space of the pineal gland, which is the third eye, and the hypothalamus and pituitary are at the base of the skull, kind of behind the eyes, kind of in the middle of the brain mass. So all of these are also related to the sex hormones, particularly through the adrenal glands. So cholesterol is a sterol related to all of these features of our homeodynamics. So it's not just that they have an effect on the heart. Now we'll go back to the very beginning. What was the first thing I said? That the cholesterol, 20% contribution by food, 80% produced within our own bodies. So what is it within our own feedback loops and mechanisms which increases our cholesterol to a level that indicates that we're under stress? And that gives you the clue. By chasing the hypothalamus and pituitary through stress and through with chronic stress through the adrenal glands, we can have an unhealthy level of cholesterol, or a high level of cholesterol can reflect a problem with those interrelated balances. So stress, food, exercise, and elimination by the bile. So we have 4 strategies using our herbal medicines to address cholesterol balance. So the evidence-based medicine or evidence-influenced medicine, which is my preference, of reducing stress or managing stress is meditation, reflection, or prayer. And I think these are all just very, very similar, but culturally relevant. In when I was growing up, it was the rosary, the family rosary, everybody kneeling down and taking time out for kind of like mantra. So every culture has these. Every culture has a culture in their food. For us, it's buttermilk. Every culture has a spiritual ritual, mantra, prayer, and these are part of our ways of coping with an adverse environment by taking time out. So whichever of those are relevant to you or possible. Journaling is a specific 10 minutes journaling, free flow. You're not trying to be clever. Nobody's going to read it. You can tear it up when you're finished. But that has a very evidence-based track record of helping us deal with stress. Very underutilized, I would say. The other way is exercise, which we've talked about, the stamina, stretching, and flexibility. Any of the body treatments that you find relaxing and de-stressing, such as massage, reflexology, craniosacral, anything, any body treatment, spiritually relaxing, restorative, increasing your resilience, these are all good. Essential fatty acids in the amounts that I described for you. The other one is stroking a pet. As I say, unless it's a goldfish, they tend not to like it. Reptiles aren't particularly mad about it either. But most of the usual family pets are there for stroking to mutual benefit for most of them. And the other thing that can reduce the other activity or pursuance would be counselling. If you feel that things are out of hand, running away with you, that your stress level really means that it's interfering with your life, or there's something that you find you're chronically reactive to that just keeps popping its head up and you can't relax. Okay, so we'll now go on to thinking about foods and herbs that might be useful. And this is kind of aimed at people living in their own homes, doing their usual shopping and incorporating things into their shopping basket. So celery is particularly good, and I would really put courgettes alongside that. Celery, courgettes, and cucumber are watery vegetables that can help with elimination. So celery in particular, if you eat a stalk of celery every day, it's likely that it will bring down your cholesterol level significantly. But I would say even more than changing the numbers, it actually has a very good eliminating effect for in general. All of the onion family, especially garlic, we've talked about that already. When you're eating fruits and vegetables, I encourage people to buy organic, particularly the root vegetables. And they don't cost any more because I get you to eat the skins. If it's non-organic, I encourage you to take the skins off because of the herbicides and pesticides. Whereas if they're organic, you can just top and tail them, chop it and use the whole lot. So I reckon it works out about the same. The other food that I've added actually is pomegranate. Pomegranate does, and it's kind of in season this time of the year, and it has various things that are particularly sustaining for the cardiovascular system. Herbs include alfalfa, hawthorn, lime flower, olive leaves, and artichokes. So any of those herbs in your diet are particularly good. So to summarize, in your cupboard, you want turmeric and black pepper, cayenne, fenugreek, cinnamon. Oh, and I'll add, where will I put it in with the foods, is nigella seeds. And nigella seeds, a teaspoon a day, also for the prevention of COVID. I think I did mention it a long time, along with sage and thyme. And then, in addition, alfalfa, which you can grow yourself on your windowsill, hawthorn, lime flower, which you can harvest in the springtime, one of the first blossoms to come out, the lime flower, linden tree, olive leaves, and artichokes. A bit hard to find artichokes in Ireland regularly in a market. Okay. So I'll show you, and I've mentioned using stevia. You would use a teaspoon in a small jug and then strain it using a tea strainer, and that's a liquid sweetener. We also have it in tincture, where you can use 2 or 3 drops in a cup of tea or a cup of herb tea if you find that it's. And I trust this. If you get the white powder of stevia, yeah, the white powder means that this has been turned into a white powder, which isn't a whole herb. I think you'd agree with me. It should be a green powder. Some of the things that we've put together are, we have tea sachets. These are 3 teaspoon tea sachets of hearty tea blend. And this is for general stamina and resilience in the cardiovascular system. It has hawthorn, wild oat straw, which is good for low energy, as in sowing your wild oats. Lime flowers, we've mentioned alfalfa, chamomile, and rose flowers. So a lot of anti-stress and specific herbs for lowering cholesterol in there. The tea sachets means there's 3 teaspoons in each sachet, so 1 sachet a day. So this is 2 weeks supply. It's the equivalent of 42 regular tea bags, but it makes it very convenient. Obviously, we pay somebody here to put these in the tea sachets. They're also available in loose tea. We put them together for people's convenience, but you can put your own blend together, and you can use the blends that are these are all on the website, and you can buy the herbs individually, make your own kilo. I encourage it. I reluctantly put them in tea sachets because people are very busy, and it was just too difficult for them to manage 3 teaspoons a day and keep clearing out tea strainers and all the rest of it. We also have fenugreek capsules. If you don't like the fenugreek you can put in your food anytime you saute onions. You can put it in your bread, 1 teaspoon per loaf. Nobody tastes it. 2 teaspoons per loaf. Some people can detect it, 3 teaspoons per loaf, and most people would say, why does your bread taste like curry? It's one of the curry spices. But you can use it in capsule form. We have turmeric in capsule form. I have done a lot of research on turmeric, what kind of turmeric is. This is pure turmeric in a capsule. So there's no extra constituents. I've looked at all of the arguments for the constituents being as liposomes or curcuminoids or whatever. based on supposed poor bioavailability of the active curcumin in turmeric. And that is taking the bioavailability as simplified as the amount in the bloodstream 20 minutes after ingestion. But it doesn't account for metabolites of turmeric being absorbed independently, turmeric or metabolites of turmeric having an effect on the gut flora, or turmeric or the metabolites of turmeric being absorbed directly across the gut wall, or directly into the lymph system, which would be like a delayed active process. So bioavailability, this is the problem with simplified science and small bits of research, which don't take a wider context. I love research, I love science, but it has to be looked at in a holistic framework. That's what I would bring to it. If you do have red rice yeast, and you are also close to, I'm using that as an indicator of a possible or probable poor glucose metabolism, and especially if you're prone to laying down abdominal fat around the waistline, then the treatment, the first treatment supplement-wise is red rice yeast. This is a yeast that's been used in China and the Far East for thousands of years. And this is just red rice yeast. It's not added with anything else. I have put in some references there for the benefits of red rice yeast. And certainly before anybody considers a statin, I would use, unless there is a past history of a heart attack, a massive family history, a smoker who does no exercise, so who has a very high risk of cardiovascular disease. There are people who come to see me who are on statins, and I persuade them not to stop them because they have some of those indicators for statins. But in that case, you're using the statins not just to lower cholesterol, but like the red rice yeast and the nigella seeds, to also be anti-inflammatory and have a pleomorphic, which means a many-faceted aspect of influence on the metabolism. So there is an indication for statins, which is within a year of a cardiac event, and in and for longer, and also for people who do have full-blown diabetes, who have a very high cholesterol. But then I would use all of these other strategies as well. I would love to see more people with diabetes in the clinic, because there's so many of these herbs, and they would have to be taken in the context of their medication. Hi, Mary. Nice to see you. Okay, so we also have hawthorn capsules. And I don't think I put it down there. Oh, I do. Yes, the herbs would be one of them. Would be hawthorn. So this is very good, particularly if people also have high blood pressure in the early stages. The time to look after high blood pressure with herbal medicine is early. Actually, the time to look after anything with herbal medicine is early. Once you've had high blood pressure for 18 months, 2 years, you've got irreversible stiffening, which makes it extremely difficult to manage solely with herbs. Many people I've managed to help them reduce their medication or go from higher doses to lower doses very effectively. So the hawthorn is very good for stamina for the cardiovascular system. We also have a relax blend for stress. And again, if you look up are my glasses over there? My little glasses. If you look up the herbal ingredients, we have to wait for the glasses. Of the relax blend, for any of you who know about herbal medicines, you'll go, oh my gosh, that looks lovely. So we have ashwagandha, lavender, chamomile, hawthorn, holy basil, rhodiola, bitter orange, herb of grace, verbena, and damiana. So these are a mix of relaxing herbs that are not sedating, but they can help with sleep because they lower the inner tension, anxiety, tight muscles, improve the digestion, all of a much more generalized, rather than just the pharma anxiolytics. The Relax blend will do a lot to relax all of the tissues that are tightened when you're anxious. Okay. They've also put Venatone up here, which is very good for anybody who has varicose veins. So going through, and all of those formulae are on the website, and they can be used as a template, or you can give us a ring and ask us about them. We can talk a little bit about if somebody has cholesterol issues. You can see that we would use liver herbs, bitter herbs, sugar balancing herbs, relaxing herbs, and heart support. Okay, and anti-inflammatory herbs. Now, what you'll find with those constituents is that overall there's a very high antioxidant level, and antioxidants are the counterbalance to ROS, reactive oxygen species, which are kind of the ones that scavenge and destroy. It's sometimes absolutely normally, because we have to keep reconstructing ourselves. But the oxidative balance is very important. So I think, does that put a balance on it? Michelle's making faces at me. Michelle is a nutritionist, that's why. Is there something I'm leaving out, Michelle? Okay, all right. Okay, so if you're talking about, let's go back to basics and first principles. If you're talking about cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, and preventing poor health, the nice thing about the herbs is they support the vital energy and resilience. People want to go through life not just avoiding disease, but actually feeling well. And I think the herbs have an energetics directly from the sun into our bodies, and they're not processed. What's amazing is that people go to the doctor, they have a number out of kilter in their bloods, they feel well, the doctor tells them, now it's subject to review of family history, smoking, diabetes, all of the other risk factors for heart disease, and whether they've had a heart attack in the last year, particularly in the last year, that would influence these. And as I say, there are people where it's absolutely relevant for them to be on statins. But say somebody who has a cholesterol of 6, a cholesterol ratio of 3.2, and the cholesterol ratio is important, and they have a very healthy HDL, which is the helpful lipids within the cholesterol family. It's not just one cholesterol number. You want to promote the HDL. Most of these herbs and spices intervene by increasing the HDL, and that promotes heart health and resilience and anti-ROS features. Okay, so the other thing is smoking. All right, so forget everything else I've said. If you're smoking, just stop smoking. There you go, easy. For people who want to stop smoking, we do have a cravings blend that we can adapt by adding a fifth of the proportion of lobelia. And that's very useful for people who are stopping smoking, even if they also use a nicotine patch. So give us a ring if you need help with smoking. It has the Relax blend, which I've just read out, and also 1/5 of lobelia, which is an antispasmodic nicotine family. It's not a nicotine replacement. That's why you can use it with a nicotine patch. But it has been helpful to a number of patients. The other thing with smoking is that I've had quite a number of patients over the years who have changed their tobacco gradually by gradually substituting herbs like chamomile, coltsfoot, mallow leaves, and reducing it to chopping it up as fine as tobacco, and gradually reducing from tipped cigarettes, manufactured cigarettes, which have lots of added chemicals, to roll-up tobacco, to gradually weaning off over 3 to 6 months. And that's been effective for people who have tried everything else in the past. So just going from smoking manufactured cigarettes to roll-ups is already a way of reducing because it's such a hassle. Okay. The other people, if you're stopping smoking, you can smoke in the car, but you have to leave the cigarettes in the boot. See how many times you stop on the road to Dublin from Galway. Very few, because we're always racing ourselves with the time when we're in the car. If you're smoking, put them in the shed in the back garden. You can smoke as many as you want, but you have to go to the shed at the back garden. Winter is coming in, so that's quite a disincentive. Don't smoke while you're speaking to people on the phone, because you're not enjoying them. Only smoke in cigarettes that you enjoy, and do anything else that you can find that you can stop cigarettes. Exercise, stress, relaxation. Air pollution is one thing I haven't addressed. We've all got into the habit of using masks. If you're in an inner city, regularly cycling, walking, continue to wear the mask, because the air pollution is a significant added disadvantage to cardiovascular disease. And particularly if you've grown up with passive smoking, it also prevents lung disease and lots of other things. So, maybe we'll do some questions. Any questions, anybody? Hi, Mary, wondering if intermittent fasting plays any role in managing cholesterol. Yeah, intermittent fasting is great. It plays a role in managing sugars, cholesterols, and the cholesterol and sugar are very interlinked. Reducing carbohydrates, if you're somebody who relies a lot on carbohydrates, just balance them better with vegetables. Okay, when I've looked at all of the diets over the last 25 years in practice, none of them say, absolutely none of them say eat more sugar. Okay, all of them say less sugar. None of them say avoid vegetables. Okay, the very extreme introductory phase of the high protein, low carbohydrate, and it is just until everything becomes manageable, and then you introduce more of the vegetables. I would encourage people to start the high protein high protein, low calorie diet on the maintenance program. It's easier to transition to, and it's easier to maintain. Okay, somebody else recommended herbs with heart medication. I can't answer that because there's just so many different kinds of heart medication. So I would say give us a ring at the clinic, and no problem with beta blockers, no problem with calcium in calcium channel blockers, no problem with ACE inhibitors, definitely a problem with warfarin, not a problem with the oral anticoagulants. The fenugreek and sugar modulating, you need to be careful that your diabetic medication doesn't need to be reduced. But putting a teaspoon in your loaf of bread or a little bit in your cooking is not a problem. But if you were to take 6 grams of fenugreek, then you could well need to lower your blood sugar medication. So it depends. A lot of these depends on how much. Using hawthorn in a tea, losing any of the herbs in the herb tea isn't a problem. I think I've covered a lot of the using any of the herbs for irregular heartbeats can be a problem, because they're a problem with, they interact with so many things that herbs are just not an exception. The fleconides and various other things. Lithium, we need to be very careful with digoxin, cyclosporin. They would be all of the drugs with a narrow therapeutic index that if you're taking any herbs, you need to consult a herbalist. So I think that's as general as I can be. Okay. And can you mention genetically high cholesterol? Yeah, there's two kinds. There's a familial hypercholesterolemia, and that would need a specialist appointment. And that is one where food can play. The one measurement of cholesterol, of triglycerides, is one where food plays a very big part. But in all my years of reading cholesterol studies of patients, very few come back with raised cholesterol. If you have familial hypertriglyceridemia, I would say you need an appointment. But if it's the kind of, my mother has high cholesterol, my brother has high cholesterol, my cousin has high cholesterol, all of these ways of managing using herbs and food would be fine. Okay. So Mary, intermittent fasting Yes, any fasting, so long as it's not extreme. No more than 3 days fasting with no food. Intermittent fasting is what I grew up with, because you had your tea at 6 o'clock and then you had nothing until the next morning. We wouldn't dream of having anything. The cupboard was shut. So we grew up on intermittent fasting. So that's not a problem. It's more what you put in your food when you're eating it, I would say. But I don't like extremes of anything. Everything in moderation, including moderation. So you have a good party every so often. And Lois, I've put my glasses on again. Struggling to balance high cholesterol level, 7.66, and being in ketosis. Should I try to reduce the amount of saturated fat? No, fats don't mean fats in your blood. I would say increase your vegetables would be more effective, particularly greens. And if you're going for a fruit, include the pomegranate. Very high in fiber, and it has particular cardiovascular benefits. I don't know if I remember to say that. So I've no problem with people using the high protein, low carbohydrate diet to help with cholesterol. And if you go to dietdoctor.com, you'll find a lot of specialists like Robert Lustig and various other people very eminent in the field, who will go through a whole video on using the high protein, low calorie, low carbohydrate diet for cholesterol management and heart disease. So there's lots of resources in there. It's by subscription, but it's free for a month, and lots of really nice recipes as well. Okay. Avoid alcohol late at night. In particular, it leaves you with a load of sugar to metabolize. That gives you more than just, it gives you a metabolic hangover the next day, and disturbs your sleep. High intensity exercise is good, not particularly marathon running or long distance, but high intensity exercise. Again, go on YouTube, look up high intensity exercise, and you'll quickly get the drift. There are some risk factor assessment scores that you can do, the Q-Risk-3 or MESA score, and do both because they might contradict each other. But it just gives you an overview of how to maintain a healthy cardiovascular system from an epidemiological point of view. But it can give you helpful. The Q-Risk-3 is the NHS one, and a MESA score is just another one to reduce your risk factors. I always recommend vitamin D, and 2,000 units is very modest, and 1 gram of vitamin C per day, especially if you smoke. Also, all of the foods high in folic acid and magnesium, and they would be important. All of the foods that are rich in folic acid and magnesium are all very generally available in a widely healthy diet. If you want an overview of a moderate healthy diet, it's the Mediterranean diet, with lots of greens, lots of vegetables, some meat, fish, chicken, or I have a concern that a lot of people who are vegetarian and vegan are going for very highly processed veggie burgers, and corn is highly processed, kind of similar to a fungus, but totally processed food. So I'm just have a bit of a concern about that. Avoid processed meats, and eat fish, vegetables, particularly the green leafy vegetables. Brussels sprouts are not just for Christmas, in other words. So that's how to have a clean diet. Snack on oatcakes, nut butters, small amount of nuts every day. A few dates, not too many, high in sugars, but a good whole food certainly beats a chocolate bar. And then sometimes have a chocolate bar. It's not like Michelle. Absolutely. This isn't about being miserable. And enjoy a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of dark chocolate. They're all absolutely fine. Be happy. Being happy is very good for lowering your risk factors for heart disease in general. So yeah, have fun, lots of fun. Play with the children, play with the grandchildren. kick a ball, dance around the kitchen is a very good form of high intensity exercise. Swimming in cold water, all of the breathing exercises. A lot of my patients are very tight and the breathing is very shallow. So you want to be relaxed, have good deep breaths. And how I know people are stressed, one of the big giveaways is the sighing. They'll give me a list of all of the things that they are experiencing that are very unpleasant, and then they'll go, okay. In ancient Irish manuscripts, there is a still untranslated article, but the heading of it is 13 clinically, 13 kinds of sighs and their clinical indications, what they indicate for the physiology. I would love to read it. It's in ancient Irish, but we used to know more. We've forgotten more that we used to know than we're probably gaining in knowledge as we speak. So let's summarize. If you are under pressure, either because of your risk factors, your smoking, lack of exercise, growing waistline, and high stress level, and you're coming through with a high cholesterol level, I don't think it's 50% of cardiovascular events are in people with a normal cholesterol. So I think of it as an indicator of changing something. Okay, not necessarily an indicator for automatically putting you on steroids. But if in the process of doing some of this, you actually want to lower your cholesterol using a supplement, I would go for the red rice yeast and vitamin D, vitamin C. Introduce all of those herbs in your diet. Use any of the herbs in any of the blends that we have made up already, either from us or from your own resources, and go from there. Okay. Okay, I think I've answered everything. How are we doing for time?
You're 50 minutes now.
50? You didn't give me the warning. Okay, thanks everybody for staying. And look forward to seeing you again. And take care of yourselves, have fun, and enjoy life. Okay, bye. And I forgot to say how to contact us and blah, blah, blah.